Hello and welcome back to another episode of ICS Cyber Talks. And today I have with me Brigadier General Daniel Bren, which is also the co-founder and CEO of Otorio. Hi, Danny.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry, wherever you are. So hello, everybody, to all our audiences and viewers.
Danny, we'll start the same. Can you give us a short bio so the audience can know you better before we start the questions?
It would be my pleasure. I had the privilege to deal with cybersecurity for the last 35 years, long before we used the term cyber. I started my journey like every 18-year-old teenager in Israel, serving in the IDF, and found myself throughout a very long career with very interesting milestones, both in technical leadership and operational roles. On my peak of my career, my last position, I was assigned to establish, and I was the first commander of the National and Joint Military Cyber Defense Command.
Let's start from there, and then we would move on. And my first question is, we are going to talk about regulation and directive. And one of the things that you were building, actually with 10 fingers, was the Defense Brigade of the IDF. And I think that one of the main jobs of this brigade was to set up a regulation for the IDF, which is cyber regulation, of course. And the question is, what are the concerns that are coming into fact when you start building a regulation? What are the things that you should point on, and especially when it was alongside with other governmental at the same time, I believe. All of you was doing regulation around critical infrastructure, but in the Army, in the IDF, it was more than that. It was even for the IT and everything else. So you're sitting in a room, you're thinking about, okay, I need now to have some regulation around how it's working.
So thank you for the question. It was a very unique experience because, as I said, almost 30 years of serving. I would say that somewhere until the late 1990s, early 2000s, the main cyber concern was data protection, confidentiality. And this is basically was the bread and butter of all militaries / federal agencies. As the digital technology came into play and more of the operational capabilities and combatant capabilities were starting to be highly dependent, not only on the IT systems, but also on the connectivity between them. IoT, sensors, actuators, and you can just imagine what I'm saying.
Yeah, of course.
Then we started seeing a movement towards what we call operational resiliency. So at the beginning, they were side by side, and then when you're at war, you need to balance and you need to make sure that the entire operational capability is protected in a way that it can serve to its purpose. Let me just open a parenthesis and give you an example. We just finished another operation around the Gaza Strip lately, and we've seen the Iron Dome at play. And Iron Dome is an actual example of an ICS system. A lot of OT, SCADA, RTUs, IoTs, sensors, actuators come at play. Now, it needs to be very accurate and
real time.
In real time. So it's highly sensitive to cyber attacks, and probably as it was written in the newspaper, some of our enemies have tried to undermine this capability. So the first thing, we needed to build a regulation that will take in its basis what we want to achieve, and it was resiliency or operational resiliency, and which accuracy is built inside, and availability, and then confidentiality. This has been a challenge. Now, if you think about modern militaries and the IDF, which is one of the strongest regional militaries in the world, was built years over years into silos. So you have the different forces. You have the Air Force, the Navy, etc., and they have their organization built in. So the regulation needed to reflect a process that will take a industrial age military organization and build a journey that will quite quickly bring it to a high resiliency type of measure. As you said, because the IDF carries basically two missions. One is or the Cyber Defense Command within the IDF carried two missions. One is make sure that the operational resiliency or operational availability exists, but the other one is assist in defend the nation. Now, when we're looking at modern affairs, so 20, 30, 40 years ago, the war was at the front. Now, not only in the missiles arena, but also in cyber arena, the home front becomes the new frontier. So you see enemies, hackers, activists, frenemies, basically attacking the public sector of the home front, the digital public sector of the home front.
We saw it in Ukraine,
right?
In a very big,
and we see it from time to time during conflicts or during special occasion days. So I would say that they basically faced the main challenge that a democracy will have: how you build digital resiliency without getting into organizations or affecting that. So this is a very sensitive balance that you need to keep.
Very complex as well.
Yes, but unfortunately, this is something that you need we needed to bridge, because we've seen more and more very potent offensive capabilities in the hands of cyber criminals and not so friendly organization. Although Israel is very small in our physical aspect, we are very developed in our digital aspect, hence we are very sensitive there, and we needed to build between the different agencies and forces of the government, which is the military and the other agencies, to build a cooperation of regulations, both internal and external, that will enable a slowly but surely building resilience in our, I would say, economy.
One of the things that I was quite surprised is that the IDF was dealing with, I would call it critical infrastructure, from 2013. And I believe that the first directive was in something like 2015 or 2016, which was something that was very new. I don't think that other places were thinking about it at all. So you got into it in a very early stage. And this is very interesting because, this is like looking very far.
So, yes and no. If you think about that, the IDF or the the cyber protection, cyber defense capabilities within the IDF, which some of them were established back in 1948 as the early days. Yeah, so the encryption unit was basically established in 1948. So we were dealing with those type of exercises, but those were, I would say, more confidential, less than evident to the public. Now, 2012, 2013, the world learned about Stuxnet, and it was the first time, I would say, that it came very clear to the general public that using a software code, you can create a damage, a physical damage, or what we call today the cyber physical security.
Yes.
And back then, I don't know how many remember, but governments were starting to hunt for offensive capabilities that will have a cyber physical aspect to them. So I would say that we did not have any, and again, it wasn't only the IDF, it was also the National Cyber Bureau and the other agencies. We didn't have any alternative rather than to pace ourselves and build the regulations and resiliency in place. But as you know, modern governments, they take the time, and hopefully today we have the level of security that is required for a modern economy like the State of Israel. It doesn't mean that this is 100% bulletproof. It means that by prioritization of our potential impacts to the economy and to the well-being of the state and the civilians, then we need to put our resources. So sometimes I see people, after a successful breach or an hack by, let's take this insurance company, they look at the government and say and ask for how did it happen. So for the public sector, unfortunately, this is the public sector's responsibility. You cannot come and demand the government to protect those systems. It's undemocratic and even in some cases not possible. So this is why governments should put regulations in place that force. And now, as we see digitalization entering more and more aspects of our lives, the regulation need to make sure that, or the regulators need to make sure that all of the critical services, not only infrastructure already,
of course,
and those who may affect the economy or the safety of people, need to be well protected.
On January, the EU Network and Information Security, what we call the NIS2 directive, was taking place. After a long time of working on it. And first I would like to understand, because the NIS2 is European, there are other regulations which are in the US and other places. Can you give me, and I know that you are well in those things, an overview about the situation, the status of regulation worldwide? Who is, let's say, more, how to say it, more in it, more demanding than the others, and if there are others that need to do some changes into it?
So it is a very interesting situation that has been developing over the last 2 years. So NIS2 is an update of NIS, the first regulation, and it covers more domains or verticals that need to be covered. It strengthens the regulators' visibility in the effectiveness of the regulation, and it puts in more security controls as need to be taken. I would say that we see, and it is very interesting, we see both in the EU and the United States, two separate but similarly developed progresses in the post-pandemic world. So in the United States, I think that it was highly affected after several successful attacks, Colonial Pipeline being one of them. But we see that also getting not only through and it is highly pushed or accelerated by the Biden administration, not only in putting the regulation in place, but also financing projects to improve the overall resiliency. So I would say that basically it is a measure that again, I'm not part of the American federal government, so I can just estimate the reason for that. I would believe that it is a major preparedness step of dealing with two cyber adversaries, and I'm not prioritizing them because this is something that the American government should do and not me. One being the Chinese, which is today, and I think that the Americans are putting them as their number one threat to the economy, and the other one being the Russians. And I don't need to explain too much what is happening based on the situation now in the Ukraine and between NATO and Russia. And the same thing is happening in the EU because the European Union is highly dependent on the economy, and this is a manufacturing. This is more traditional, old-fashioned. So we've seen the development of the NIS into the NIS2 by covering more mission-critical industries, food, pharma, transportation, and not only critical infrastructure, etc. So everything that is involving or surrounding both the economy and the services that the public is taking. So let me give you as an example. If you take a pulp and paper production site, so they are basically manufacturing also energy, a lot of energy. They're providing energy to the network, and on the other hand, they have also a lot of wastewater chemicals. If there will be a spillage of the chemical pond into the near river that is used to cool down the heating systems, it will be a huge environmental damage. If something will happen to the recovery boiler, there will be losses in life. So expanding the regulation was in place and strengthening not only the paper but also the governance and being able to measure the progress of the organization in place, and the fact that you need now to contact the government and prove that you're building either your resiliency in place, or you need to share if something has happened. It also strengthens the knowledge building between the different members of the EU. So I think that those are two separated, disconnected processes, but they are basically both accelerated, have been accelerated in the same time. So just to summarize at this point about the regulation, and they also developed a lot of controls in place that they would like to see, and maybe we'll address that a little bit later. I believe that all Western economies, and the foremost of the Western economies, also democracies, need not only to build those type of regulations in place, but also to cooperate between the different nations in order to be able to build in what I would call a global resiliency against the bad actors, the cyber criminals that usually come from, let's put it like that, not so democratic areas.
Yeah. There are two ways of taking regulation. Okay. First of all, nobody likes regulation. We would start with that. But there are those that would do only what the regulation would ask and say, okay, I need to stand in the regulation. Here I am. That's it. The other part would look at it and said, okay, this is my jumpstart. I would take the regulation, I would put it on, but for me, it's the first step. You are connecting with a lot of customers. How they see it?
So I think that this is a trend in change. Those who just want to tick the box, they still are going to tick the box. But as the regulator identified that, he put some emphasis also on the personal liability of the C-levels and the boards. So this is one aspect. The second aspect is the fact that insurance companies have started to increase the costs of insurance, not only on the cyber chapter, but also on when you want to insure your productivity and you are a digitalized organization, then they would say you have an OT security in place. If you are not compliant to the regulations, we are not going to insure you. So those two I would say, streams have started a journey where organizations understand the dependency of their revenue streams and their insurance and their personal liability on the fact that they need to put a significant cybersecurity plan in place, OT and IT. Now, because of the scarce resource of understanding how to put in place a proper or an appropriate OT security plan, I think that the regulation that came in place both in Europe and in the United States have basically depicted the journey that you need to go. Whether those are going from merely putting technology to assessing the risk and to assessing the exposure that an organization has and mitigating the risk before it turns into a breach, and prioritizing them according to the potential business impact or to deal safety associated damages. Doing assessment on segmentation. This is something that was not very common on other security controls, how well you're defended on security controls. Having in place incident management protocols and tabletopping them, being prepared to if something is occurring, and building other business continuity. But most important, and I think that it is coming to the first point that you raised, dashboarding and reporting for the C-level to see basically where I am benchmarked relative to other partners in my industry or in my region, and how I'm benchmarked on the regulation, and what decisions I need to take now in order to improve my resiliency or reduce the associated risk to that, and enforcing those type of capabilities into the organization. Now, we see more and more organizations understanding that they cannot continue and be under the just tick the box on one hand, but they are running into knowledge and resource problems when they want to address those type of resource. I mean, competence and skills when they want to address those type of problems.
In the last, I believe, 2-3 years, we heard about couple of incidents, especially, I believe, in water plants. We had the one in Florida, a couple of them in the UK. So we see that the cyber crime, whether if it is governmental or not, because today the cyber syndicate has enough power like governments. It's not like the old days that only the government have the power to do that. And when I was speaking with some of the people that are dealing with that in the US, in the UK, in Germany, the feeling is that they're saying, yeah, it's happened, but because of something. So it wasn't just, like a regular ransomware that you are throwing away 1,000 vulnerabilities wherever you can and something would catch. I was saying, no, this was targeted. There was a reason for this being targeted. Now, I personally have a problem with this kind of thinking because I believe that it's the same. You are trying to go to the place, or not I, but the cybercrime is trying to go to the places which are less secured because it's easier. And on the other hand, I don't see too much regulation that is taking care of those things. Maybe the NIS2 now is taking care in the EU. In the States, if I don't wrong, there is nothing right now.
No, there are
There is?
this, yes. So after Colonial Pipeline, they're starting to build regulations, and TSA and CISA are generating a lot of regulations. So again, I would like to demystify this. Yes, most of those attacks were not nation-state sponsored, but they were targeted attacks because those were low-hanging fruit. It was cyber criminal type of attack. Whether it starts with a spray casting the net and then it moves to a target, or it's a targeted attack. We see more and more organizations, and that are basically susceptible or could be affected by a cyber attack, whether this is going to be a direct one or a supply chain. Just last week, we heard that ABB was breached, and then he needed to stop the services to all the OT environments that ABB is managing, and this is not unique. Same thing happened with SolarWinds. So we see more and more supply chain type of attacks that basically at the end of the day penetrate the OT environments. And one of the reasons that the OT environments have been identified as lucrative, first of all, they are the main revenue driving engine of an organization. And secondly, they were, as I said, they were developed and built inherently insecure. So they are very easy to attack.
You said it before, and we were talking about that in our preliminary talk. It was, you said that the OT attack is a risk to the whole market with all the aspects. And that actually, if you are attacking OT with success, you are influencing the whole economy. It's not only, this factory or this infrastructure or whatever. It's the total economy. Can you explain more about it?
Yes, but then I hope that on one hand, I will not scare people. On the other hand, I will not give some ideas to other people. But let's take a modern country, a modern city. Think about the transportation into a metropolitan, starting with the airport, whether this is domestic or international, then the transportation system. Everything is a converged IT, OT, IoT type of environment. So if I can cease this operation and I can create or safety issues, or I can create a significant disturbance. Let's talk about supply chain, especially that was expedited after the pandemic or post-pandemic. Today, you have smart warehouses that in pharmacies, you basically bring your recipe, and a robot will bring you the drug and put the ticket, including the doctors. So there are multiple ways that a successful attack on a converged modern environment would have an impact on our lives. It's not just, critical infrastructure, electricity. I gave the example of a smart manufacturing. Think about that. 2, 3, 5 years from now, we'll see the autonomous pulp mill or paper mill that will run almost without any man intervention, and having a very high temperature, very high pressure, very risky environmental hazards in place that can be released just by a successful attack or breach, I would say that this poses a significant threat to our economy and our daily life.
Today, we see a lot of transactions or automation between manufacturing, finance, transportation, and we're trying to automate everything. It's good for the business, for the revenue line, for the gross profit, and more factories are getting into it. What we called in the past the industry 4.0, today they're talking 4.5, 5, a lot of numbers. Can we keep the security in a good level when we are running to open our systems?
Yes, because we don't have any other option. And when you ask me about my career, I started with the 30 years that I did with the Israeli Defense Forces, and 5 years ago, a little bit more than 5 years ago, my partner and co-founder, the CTO Yair Atar, and myself have started Otorio with our joint venture partner Andritz, an automation engineering group from Austria. So we understood that exactly the world is expediting into autonomous, you can call it again, Industry 4.0, 5.0, whatever, we will go there. And the same concepts that basically are driving Industry 4.0 need to drive the protection of those environments. So I would say, first of all, take a risk-based approach, like you're doing risk-based maintenance today. Identify the gaps and exposures and mitigate them. Put a lot of simplification and automation into the process. Take a lot of data, put engines in place, and Otorio, the company, we just been awarded the Cyber Digital Twin patent in the United States, identifying automatically the risks and basically prioritizing them according to the safety or business-related impacts, and providing a very simple, feasible, leveraging the existing security controls mitigation playbook in order to address this. So the same concepts that are driving the innovation need and should drive the protection. And while you're leveraging the same type of concepts, approach, and technology into place, you can be always, I won't say one step ahead of the adversary, at least, but one step ahead of your neighbor, and he will be the low-hanging fruit.
Well, one of the things that I'm talking a lot when I'm talking with CISOs is that, in a way, CISO would come with the concept of no. We want to do that? No, because this is a risk. We want to do that? No, because it's a risk. And on the other end, I'm trying to explain that the business is the main issue, not the security. So all the perspective should be, yes, but how can I do that? And you're talking about one of your tools that is doing risk assessment all the time. that is giving you the picture. Is it built on-prem and cloud as well? Because 4.0, it's a lot about going out to the cloud. All the time we are trying, for years, we were trying to gap everything, to say, no, everything is in a gap, we're not going out, nobody's going in. And now you're coming with the optimization systems, which are usually on the cloud. And you need to drive a lot of information out and to get information in. How you deal with that, especially in the OT environment?
So it is a journey. And I would say that I cannot even categorize by verticals/geographies. There are areas where the government is not allowing you to take the data out, or the organization. So our solution basically supports all three options. It can be cloud-driven, it can be on-prem, and it can be hybrid. And we've developed a platform, a very structured platform to support by the same concept that you said about what the CISO needs to do, to support basically the customer needs and the customer requirements. Having said that, we see a development and we see more and more customers going to the clouds, whether those are private clouds or there are unique public, but with unique safety controls in place. So from Otorio's perspective, we are here to support our customers and provide them with the best protection that they can have on their operational environments, and we can do that according to their architecture. But I would like, to address something that you just mentioned before about the CISO. So as we've seen in other domains, I would say the evolution of the risk officer. I think that CISOs that are part of the more traditional industrial age that think that everything can be built can be protected by building very high walls, are suddenly being replaced by CISOs that understand that they are part of the business, and they should be like the immunity system that we have in our bodies. Each and every day, minute, hour, we are surrounded by germs or bacteria or viruses, and we are continuing to operate and do very incredible things. And our immunity system basically defends or protects our body and operational capabilities. So I would say the same thing needs to apply to an organization. So the CISO needs to change their mindset then and start to understand that, first of all, it's not a building the wall type of, and it's not just a technology. So I had a very interesting discussion with one of our partners 2 weeks ago, and they said, we need the detection and response capability. And I said, okay, do you have a SOC 24/7 SOC that is operating? And said no. So I said, so why do you need the technology? Because the technology by itself will not do the system. So the CISOs need to understand that they need to take a different approach and develop themselves to you call that the yes how. I would say to understand that they are part of the business development group, and they just have a competency around cybersecurity.
The new tools that are dealing with the cybersecurity for OT, and I would get here to a better definition. The old tools were IDSs, like give me the option of detecting, don't touch anything, especially don't make any move that would take down my line. And today we start to see that there are also prevention, which 2 or 3 years ago it was like a bad word, nobody's getting into it. No COO would accept that a machine would stop anything without his permission. But in the new age of the tools, we see also prevention. I don't know, and I'm sorry for that, if Otorio is doing prevention, But how you see it?
So we're not doing prevention, and we're so we're doing protection in prevention, but we're not doing enforcement of prevention.
Okay.
And the reason for that is the sensitivity and criticality of those environments. And as much as I am confident, and we have even a metrics that shows the level of confidence in our mitigation, as I'm as confident that we provide the most accurate and responsible mitigation steps, I think that this is not yet proven and developed enough to be enforced automatically without any validation by. So what we will do, we are providing a very concrete short list of protection or prevention mechanisms, and somebody needs to look at that and acknowledge that. So we are not completing the.
So it's not full automated, but still you are giving all the information for the one that should get the decision.
So we are doing all the hard work and and heavy lifting of analyzing, triaging automatically, providing you with the outcome, and then you need just to make sure that it makes sense and validate it. So I believe that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we'll see more autonomous operation and enforcement getting into the place. But I don't believe that both the operational environments and the technology are mature enough to do that.
So let's go to the new buzz, AI, because we can't get out of it, Until 1 year ago, if you are a startup, you had the word cyber inside, you are in a good place. Today, well, at least my feeling is that you must have cyber, but also you must have the AI inside. Now, it's not only words. It's a lot of capabilities that are taking place. I don't sure that people understand how much you need to train the system. We used to call it the neural network in the past, but we see it getting more and more. ChatGPT is not part of it, but it's part of the AI. Now, the question is, do you have part of it? Do you have AI in your system that are learning all the time? And more than that, do you have a way to gather information from a lot of places? It's as training for your next version. I hope that I was clear.
Yes. So before that, I would like to start with, I read yesterday a very interesting article in one of the leading Israeli newspapers, Iton Haaretz, and the professor from the Weizmann Institute said that basically we have a understanding of the AI, whether it's OpenAI, ChatGPT or others. We have an understanding of that as we have on the human brain, a very, very, very limited understanding of what is happening there. So leveraging AI or /OpenAI is one example. It can benefit in a lot of ways to each and every organization and company, and maybe I'll address that in a second. We do not leverage that into our systems for many reasons. But we do leverage the technology wherever it makes sense to expedite the development and our capabilities, or to enhance significantly the human brain capacity in the development. It's not only training, but it's also asking the right questions. So is that a technology changing tool? Yes, definitely. It will have a tremendous impact on our lives in the next years. Are we leveraging that to do whatever is possible? Yes. Do we use that as part of the engines? No. And again, and today I read another interesting article. So one of a colleague of mine, he posted it on LinkedIn. He was one of the leading intelligence officers in the IDF. Basically, they took 3 operational scenarios. The week before the 73 war, the week before the Japanese assault on in Pearl Harbor, and then a imaginary scenario, and they provided that with the information. And they ran multiple scenarios, and their basically outcome said that it cannot be a decision-making tool, but it definitely would have changed the discussion around the table, both in the American government or the Israeli government, regarding the possibility of a Japanese/Egyptian assault in the following days. So I would say that this is going to be and think about it. You were just asking me about cybersecurity or other aspects. You didn't think about ChatGPT sitting in a strategic discussion of the government of Israel when they're dealing with a strategic security risk. So yes, I think that it is going to fundamentally change the way that we are going to do our businesses. Cybersecurity is going to be one of them.
We're talking about cyber war. This is the definition today for the main war, because soldiers, guns, and everything probably would do less damage than what you can do with cyber, and you were talking about it before. I'm trying to get some imagination over here, but in the end, it would be 2 machines that are fighting each other?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I think that there was a short video that showed that 2 AI machines were talking to each other until they started talking in a new language that nobody understood. So somewhere along the path, I believe that it will be something like that, because it's machine-machine interaction. What is more concerning is that those machines will be connected to vital operations that of human behavior, and it looks like science fiction today, maybe for some. Although there were in the past some Hollywood movies about that. Terminator is an example. I think that this is basically reality if we are not going to do and put the right measures in place. We shouldn't stop progress, but we should do that eye-opened and with responsibility.
There are a lot of people that are talking, and there is a big movement right now about putting regulation on the AI. Especially, I believe, because they are seeing a bit more far. And we know that what was 10 years ago science fiction today is quite real. Or even that what we saw in films that is looking like science fiction, actually probably in the reality there are something that is more crazy than that. How you feel with that? You think we need to put some regulation on that?
So regardless if we need or not, what the history has taught us is that progress was not stopped by regulation. So let's take encryption. Until the 80s, 90s, governments were enforcing the level of encryption that an organization can use. And this is because they could decrypt to a certain extent. But then progress came, and you couldn't stop that. It was a demand coming from the market, unless you were in a non-democratic country. And the second thing that we need to take into consideration, that regulation basically is for the public. It is for the public sector. In the high security or high clearance labs, they will continue to develop those type of capabilities, which when they will proliferate like other things, they will have an impact on our lives. So ransomware is a spillage of a nation state capability. And it was a leak. And some argue, I don't know if it's correct or not, that the COVID virus is a leak from a lab. So even if they will regulate that and the governments will build this AI capability, there is a potential of a leak, and then regardless of regulations, we will all be affected by that.
Yeah, so, regulation are not insurance for nothing.
Yes. So I didn't want to alarm everybody. There are multiple positive aspects to AI, and in medicine, in other areas, and I hope that we'll find a way to harvest the best and contain the worst.
Danny, we came to the end, and you already know how it's working. So what you would like our audience to take from this discussion?
Don't be concerned with OT cybersecurity. Assume the responsibility. Take the right vendors/partners, build capabilities, assess the risk, and manage it, like we are doing in every other aspect. If I want to demystify OT cybersecurity, it's not rocket science. It is a complex but manageable problem.
Great. Danny, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you as always. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you.